She confronted her billionaire CEO husband after he secretly married his mistress. "You married her, while still married to me?" Emily Parker's voice cut through the boardroom like shattered glass. Her husband's face drained of color as she slammed the wedding photos onto the polished mahogany table. 8 years together, 2 children, and you couldn't even divorce me first? Ethan Carter, tech billionaire and CEO of Quantum Innovations, stared at his wife with cold calculation in his eyes. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." "No," Emily laughed bitterly, addressing the stunned board members. "I was supposed to be quietly disposed of. But here's what my husband didn't count on. I built the technology that made him rich. And I have proof he stole it all." The room fell into shocked silence as Ethan's carefully constructed world began crumbling around him. Have you ever wondered what happens when a woman discovers not just betrayal, but theft of her life's work? Emily Parker sat alone in her luxurious Manhattan penthouse, rain streaming down the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. The space felt cavernous tonight, too large for one person. She checked her watch, 11:42 p.m. Ethan had promised to be home for dinner. Again, their twin daughters had waited until 9 before Emily finally tucked them into bed with another excuse about their father's important meetings. Her phone buzzed on the marble countertop. Probably Ethan with another elaborate explanation. She picked it up, expecting his name on the screen. Instead, an unknown number displayed with an attached image file. Emily hesitated. Spam, most likely. But something made her tap the notification, a decision that would alter the course of her entire life. The first image loaded. Ethan in a tailored white linen suit, standing beneath a floral arch on a pristine beach at sunset. Her stomach tightened. The second image appeared. A woman in an elegant silk gown, her back to the camera, dark hair cascading down. The third image. Ethan sliding a ring onto the woman's finger. The fourth. Ethan kissing the bride. The fifth and final image. The woman turning toward the camera. Sophie Bennett, Ethan's vice president of international operations. Emily's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She steadied herself against the kitchen island, suddenly unable to breathe properly. The timestamp on the photos. Yesterday, while Ethan had claimed to be at a critical investor meeting in Singapore. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Thought you should know. He's been lying to everyone." Emily sank onto a bar stool, her mind racing to process what she was seeing. The man she had given up her own career for, the father of her children, her partner of 8 years, had married another woman, without divorcing her first. What would you do if your entire reality shattered in 5 photos? "Mom?" a small voice called from the hallway. 6-year-old Lily stood in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "I had a bad dream." Emily quickly locked her phone screen, forcing her face into a calm mask. "Come here, sweetheart." She opened her arms and Lily ran into them. Over her daughter's head, Emily stared at the dark phone screen, her reflection distorted in the glass. The man she loved had betrayed her in the most public, humiliating way possible, and she would not let him get away with it. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. This one would change everything. Before we dive deeper, who hasn't subscribed yet? Don't just watch in silence. This story's only getting darker. Hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you received those photos. 8 years earlier, Emily Bennett had been the rising star of Silicon Valley. A brilliant software engineer with 2 advanced degrees from MIT, she specialized in artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms that could predict human behavior patterns. At 28, she had already turned down acquisition offers from 3 major tech companies, determined to build something meaningful on her own terms. Then she met Ethan Carter at a tech incubator event in San Francisco. He wasn't the most technically skilled founder there, but he possessed something many brilliant engineers lacked: charisma, vision, and an uncanny ability to make people believe in impossible futures. "Your algorithm is revolutionary," he told her that night, blue eyes intense under the industrial lighting of the converted warehouse space. "But you're thinking too small. This isn't just about predicting consumer behavior. This could transform everything: healthcare, finance, security." "That's the plan," Emily had replied, intrigued despite her natural skepticism. "Once I secure the right funding." Ethan smiled, a flash of perfect white teeth against his tan skin. Funding isn't your problem. Scaling is. You need someone who can translate your genius into something the world will pay billions for. And that's you? She raised an eyebrow, amused by his confidence. That's us, he corrected. Together, we could build something legendary. 3 months later, they launched their startup, Quantum Innovations. Emily developed the core technology, an AI system that could predict human decision-making with unprecedented accuracy. Ethan secured the investors, built the brand, and sold the vision. Within 2 years, they had a valuation of $300 million. Within 3 years, they were married. We were unstoppable together, Emily whispered to herself, staring at the wedding photos on her phone. The memories felt like they belonged to someone else now. A naive woman who had believed in partnership and trust. How many of us have trusted someone completely, only to discover we never really knew them at all? The morning after discovering the photos, Emily dropped the twins at school, kissing them each twice and promising to pick them up herself that afternoon. Lily and her sister Emma were carbon copies of her, same chestnut hair, same analytical green eyes, same stubborn determination. Ethan often joked that they had inherited nothing from him except his height. Instead of heading home, Emily drove to an unmarked office building in Midtown. The elevator required a key card, which she retrieved from her purse. On the 12th floor, a receptionist nodded in recognition. He's expecting you, Mrs. Carter. Emily followed the hallway to a corner office where a man in his 60s looked up from behind a cluttered desk. Frank Donovan had been a detective with the NYPD for 30 years before opening his private investigation firm. His weathered face showed no surprise at her appearance. You were right, he said without preamble, sliding a folder across the desk. Your husband has been very busy. Emily sat down, opening the file with steady hands. Inside were surveillance photos, financial records, property deeds, and flight manifests. The evidence of Ethan's deception was meticulously documented. The wedding took place on a private island in the Maldives, Frank explained. Legally, it's not recognized in the United States since he's still married to you, but he used some connections to have it registered in Singapore, where he's established residency for tax purposes. And Sophie? Been working closely with him for about 18 months. Started as his VP of International Operations after your company expanded to Asia. The relationship appears to have begun approximately 10 months ago, based on hotel records and private jet manifests. Emily nodded, absorbing the information with clinical detachment. And the offshore accounts? Frank's expression darkened. That's where things get interesting. He's been moving significant assets, about $40 million so far, into shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The paperwork traces back to Sophie Bennett as the primary beneficiary. He's preparing to leave me, Emily concluded, setting up his escape. It appears so, but there's something else. Frank hesitated. While tracking the money, we found irregularities in the patent filings for Quantum's core technology. Emily looked up sharply. What kind of irregularities? The original patents were filed solely under Ethan Carter's name. You're not listed as an inventor or co-creator on any of the foundational technology. The room seemed to tilt slightly. That's impossible. I developed the entire predictive algorithm suite. Ethan couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. Frank slid another document across the desk. According to these filings from 7 years ago, Ethan Carter is the sole inventor of the Quantum Predictive Intelligence Framework. Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Emily stared at the patent documents, her mind racing. She remembered signing countless papers in the early days of their company, trusting Ethan to handle the legal aspects while she focused on development. Had he deliberately excluded her from the patents? Had he been planning this betrayal from the very beginning? The question hung in the air. How long had this elaborate deception been in motion? There's more, Frank said quietly. The company bylaws were amended 3 years ago. As CEO, Ethan has the authority to force a buyout of any shareholder, including you, at a predetermined valuation if certain conditions are met. What conditions? If a shareholder is found to have violated company ethics policies or engaged in activities that could damage the company's reputation. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. He's setting me up. The second marriage, the offshore accounts, he's creating a situation where he can claim I'm the problem. That I'm unstable or vindictive when I discover his infidelity. Frank nodded grimly. Classic gaslighting on a corporate scale. If you react publicly to his betrayal, he can invoke the clause, force you out of the company you built, and walk away with everything. Emily closed the folder, her shock hardening into resolve. He's underestimated me. Again. The trap was elegant, but she'd just found the key to dismantling it entirely. That evening, Ethan called to say he would be home late. Again. His voice carried the practiced concern of a man who had delivered the same lines countless times. The Singapore deal is more complicated than we anticipated. The regulatory hurdles are— Take your time, Emily interrupted, her voice perfectly calm. The girls and I understand how important your work is. A brief pause. Everything okay? You sound different. Just tired. Lily had nightmares again. Poor thing. Give her a kiss from me. I'll try to make it home for breakfast. We'll see you when we see you, Emily replied, ending the call before he could respond. She walked to the twins' bedroom, watching them sleep from the doorway. Emma and Lily, innocent and unaware that their world was about to change dramatically. They adored their father, who, despite his absences, made his time with them magical. Elaborate birthday parties, surprise trips to Disney, bedtime stories acted out with different voices for each character. How would they react when they learned the truth? That their hero had created a second family? That he had been systematically erasing their mother from her own life's work? The thought of their inevitable pain made Emily's determination even stronger. Emily returned to the living room and opened her laptop. She hadn't written code in years, having transitioned to a more ceremonial role as Chief Innovation Officer after the twins were born. Ethan had insisted it would give her more flexibility for motherhood while keeping her connected to the company. Another calculated move in his long game. She began typing, her fingers remembering the patterns and shortcuts. Within hours, she had accessed the company's secure servers using administrative credentials Ethan didn't know she possessed. The original code for the quantum predictive intelligence framework was still there, buried in archive repositories. Her code, her comments, her digital fingerprints embedded in every line. The evidence was irrefutable. The genius behind quantum had always been hers. Next, she accessed their personal financial accounts. As she suspected, Ethan had been gradually limiting her visibility into their assets. Joint accounts contained reasonable sums, but nowhere near the wealth they had accumulated. Properties she thought they owned together were held in trusts she had no control over. By morning, Emily had compiled enough evidence to understand the full scope of Ethan's betrayal. This wasn't a recent development or a midlife crisis. This was a calculated, years-long strategy to build an empire on her innovations while systematically positioning her for eventual disposal. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. She could file for divorce immediately, but that would play into his hands. He would portray her as the vengeful wife, use the company bylaws to force her out, and walk away with the technology she had created. She could negotiate privately, but Ethan had proven himself a master manipulator. Any private agreement would likely contain hidden traps. No, this required something more dramatic, something public, something that would expose not just his personal betrayal, but the professional theft that had made it possible. Sometimes the only way to fight a master strategist is to change the game entirely. Wait, before I continue, has everyone subscribed? If you're still watching without hitting that button, you're missing the heart of this journey. Like, share, and comment. Would you stay silent or confront him? 3 days later, Emily sat in her lawyer's office, reviewing their strategy one final time. Once we do this, there's no going back, said Catherine Wu, a formidable attorney known for handling high-profile tech divorces. Are you absolutely certain this is how you want to proceed? Emily nodded. Ethan believes he's the smartest person in every room. That's always been his weakness. The board meeting starts at 10 a.m. We'll arrive at 10:30 during the quarterly projections review. That gives us the maximum audience. Catherine checked her watch. The forensic accountants have verified everything? Yes, and I've secured copies of all the original code repositories with timestamps and authentication logs proving I was the primary developer. And the children? Emily's expression softened slightly. They're spending the day with my sister. I've told them we'll have a family meeting tonight. Catherine gathered her documents. For what it's worth, I've handled dozens of cases involving powerful men who betray their wives. I've never seen anyone as prepared as you are. I've had 8 years to learn how Ethan operates, Emily replied. He taught me everything about strategic thinking, just not the way he intended. The irony wasn't lost on her. The skills he'd cultivated in her would now be his undoing. The Quantum Innovations headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Manhattan. Emily had helped design the space in the early days when they were expanding from their first cramped office. Now, as she walked through the sleek reception area, she felt like a visitor in her own creation. Employees stared as she passed, whispering behind their hands. Her presence was unusual these days, another part of Ethan's gradual campaign to erase her. The chief innovation officer, who never innovated anything anymore. The boardroom occupied the entire northeast corner of the top floor, with views of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Emily paused outside the double doors, listening to Ethan's confident voice as he presented the quarterly numbers, which puts us at 22% growth year over year, exceeding projections by nearly 7 points. The Asian expansion is proceeding ahead of schedule, thanks largely to our strategic partnership in Singapore. Emily nodded to Catherine, who opened the doors without knocking. 12 heads turned simultaneously. The board members, mostly older men with distinguished gray hair and expensive suits, registered surprise. Ethan, standing at the head of the table with a presentation remote in his hand, froze mid-sentence. Emily, he recovered quickly, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. This is unexpected. We're in the middle of the quarterly review. I'm aware, Emily replied, her voice steady. But there are some urgent matters the board needs to address immediately. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps we could discuss this after the meeting? I'm sure whatever it is can wait an hour. It's waited 8 years, that's long enough. Emily turned to the board members. Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I've discovered some irregularities that directly impact the company's future and your investments. The chairman, Walter Grayson, frowned. What kind of irregularities, Mrs. Carter? Intellectual property theft, financial fraud, and corporate governance violations, for starters. Emily nodded to Catherine, who began distributing folders to each board member. Ethan's face darkened. This is inappropriate and unnecessary. Emily has been struggling with some personal issues recently, and I'm concerned this is... By personal issues, do you mean discovering that my husband secretly married another woman while still legally married to me? Emily interrupted, her voice cutting through the room. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Ethan's face went completely still, a sure sign he was calculating his next move. That's absurd, he finally said, forcing a concerned expression. Gentlemen, I think we should adjourn this meeting. My wife clearly needs... Page 1, Emily announced, ignoring him. Photos from Ethan's wedding to Sophie Bennett, our VP of International Operations, 3 days ago in the Maldives. Page 2, the marriage certificate filed in Singapore through a shell company that also happens to control $40 million in company assets that have been moved offshore in the past 6 months. The board members flipped through the documents, expressions ranging from shock to anger. Ethan, Walter Grayson said slowly, is this accurate? Before Ethan could respond, the boardroom doors opened again. Sophie Bennett stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored black suit, confusion evident on her face. I was told there was an emergency board meeting, she said, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Emily standing confidently by the table, Ethan's rigid posture, the board members reviewing documents with growing alarm. Perfect timing, Emily said. Sophie, please join us. We were just discussing your recent wedding. Sophie paled, looking to Ethan for guidance. He gave a slight shake of his head, but it was too late. The carefully orchestrated deception was unraveling in real time. Page 3, Emily continued, the original patent filings for the Quantum Predictive Intelligence Framework, listing Ethan Carter as the sole inventor. Page 4, server logs and code repositories proving that I personally wrote over 90% of the core algorithm, with timestamps and authentication signatures. Ethan stepped forward, his charm shifting into damage control mode. This is a gross mischaracterization of a complex situation. Yes, Emily contributed to early development, But the patent-table innovations came after significant evolution of the original concepts. That's a lie, Emily said calmly. Page 5 shows the comparison between my original code and what's currently running in our systems. They're functionally identical. Walter Grayson removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. Ethan, if these allegations are true— They're not, Ethan cut in. This is clearly a personal vendetta. Emily and I have been having difficulties in our marriage. She's using the company as leverage in what should be a private matter. Emily laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Is that what you call secretly marrying your mistress while still legally married to me? Difficulties? Sophie stepped forward, her composure cracking. Ethan told me you were separated, that the divorce was being finalized but kept quiet for stock price stability. We were never separated, Emily replied, her voice softening slightly as she addressed Sophie. He's been coming home to our children every night, or at least that's what he wanted us to believe. The revelation hung in the air. How many lies had Ethan told to maintain his dual life? The question was written on every face in the room. Ethan's face hardened. Enough. This is inappropriate for a board meeting. Walter, I suggest we adjourn and address these personal matters privately. This stopped being personal when you stole my work, Emily countered. Page 6 outlines the company bylaw amendments Ethan quietly implemented 3 years ago, giving him the power to force out any shareholder, including me, if they damage company reputation. A convenient trap for when I inevitably discovered his deception. The board members continued flipping through the documents, their expressions growing increasingly grave. There's more, Catherine interjected, speaking for the first time. Page 7 details financial transactions between Quantum Innovations and shell companies in Singapore that appear to be controlled by Mr. Carter and Ms. Bennett. These transactions have not been properly disclosed to shareholders or the SEC. Walter Grayson looked up sharply. Is this accurate, Ethan? Ethan's confident facade began to crack. Those are legitimate business expenses related to our Asian expansion. Everything was approved through proper channels. By you, Emily pointed out, to companies owned by you, without board disclosure or approval. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ethan glanced at Sophie, who had moved away from him, her own shock evident as she reviewed the financial documents. You told me those companies were legitimate business partners, Sophie said quietly. You said the board had approved everything. Ethan ignored her, focusing on damage control with the board. Gentlemen, this is clearly a complex situation that requires careful review. I suggest we adjourn this meeting and reconvene after legal has had a chance to examine these claims. Actually, Catherine interjected, we've already filed complaints with the SEC and the U.S. Patent Office this morning. Given the nature of the allegations, I would advise against any attempt to destroy or alter company records. Ethan's face flushed with anger. This is corporate terrorism. Emily is trying to destroy the company we built because of a personal grievance. The company I built, Emily corrected, which you systematically stole from me while planning to discard me when I was no longer useful. She turned to the board members. I'm not trying to destroy Quantum. I'm trying to save it from a CEO who has committed fraud, theft, and securities violations that could result in criminal charges. Walter Grayson stood up, his expression grave. I think we need to call an emergency executive session. Ethan, Emily, we'll need both of you to step out while the board confers. Walter, you can't seriously be— Ethan began. Now, Ethan, Walter said firmly, and I suggest you call your personal attorney. As they exited the boardroom, Ethan grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her into an empty conference room. His handsome face was contorted with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed. You're destroying everything we built. No, Emily replied, calmly removing his hand from her arm. I'm reclaiming what you stole from me. There's a difference. This vindictive stunt will tank the stock price. You'll lose millions just to spite me. This isn't about money, Emily said. It's about truth. It's about showing our daughters what happens when someone tries to erase you. Ethan's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. The girls. Think about what this will do to them, Emily. Their father publicly humiliated, possibly facing charges. Is that what you want for them? Don't you dare use our children as leverage. Emily's voice hardened. You should have thought about them before you married another woman. It wasn't a legal marriage, Ethan countered. It was symbolic for Sophie's family in Singapore. A business arrangement to solidify our Asian partnerships. Emily stared at him, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time. Do you actually believe your own lies? Or do you just think everyone around you is stupid enough to believe them? Before Ethan could respond, Sophie appeared in the doorway, her composed exterior now completely shattered. You told me she knew, Sophie said, her voice trembling. You said she had agreed to a quiet divorce after the Asian expansion was complete, that she was being compensated generously. Ethan's jaw tightened. Sophie, now is not the time. You told me you loved me, Sophie continued, tears forming in her eyes. That once everything was finalized, we would announce our marriage properly. But you were never planning to divorce her, were you? You just needed my family's connections in Singapore. That's not true, Ethan insisted, his charm resurfacing. This is exactly what Emily wants, to turn us against each other. Everything I told you was true. The timing is just complicated. Emily watched the exchange with a strange sense of detachment. She recognized Ethan's tactics, the way he could make you doubt your own reality, the subtle shifts in his story to adapt to new information, the masterful way he positioned himself as the victim of circumstances. Have you ever watched someone you once loved reveal their true nature and felt nothing but pity? He's lying to you, Sophie, Emily said quietly, just like he lied to me, for years. Sophie looked between them, uncertainty clear on her face. The offshore accounts, were those really for tax purposes? Of course, Ethan replied smoothly. Corporate tax optimization is standard practice. Then why is my name on them instead of the company's? Sophie asked. And why didn't you tell me about the $40 million transfer last month? Ethan's expression hardened. We can discuss this privately, Sophie. This is exactly the kind of division Emily is trying to create. No, Sophie shook her head. I want answers now. Did you marry me just to secure the Singapore contracts? Before Ethan could respond, Catherine appeared at the door. The board is requesting Ethan's presence. Alone. Ethan straightened his tie, composure returning. This isn't over, he said to Emily before following Catherine back to the boardroom. Left alone with Sophie, Emily felt an unexpected wave of sympathy. The younger woman looked shell-shocked, her perfect exterior crumbling. How long have you known? Sophie asked after a moment. About the wedding? 4 days, Emily replied. About his broader deception? I've been piecing it together for months. Sophie sank into a chair. I believed everything he told me, that you were partners in name only, that you had agreed to step back from the company, that the children understood the arrangement. My children have no idea their father has been living a double life, Emily said, her voice hardening slightly. They adore him, and now I have to somehow explain this to them. Sophie looked up, genuine remorse in her eyes. I never would have, if I had known the truth. I believe you, Emily said, surprising herself with the realization that she meant it. Ethan is exceptionally convincing. I was married to him for 8 years and never saw the full picture until now. What happens next? Sophie asked. The board will likely suspend him pending investigation. The SEC will get involved because of the financial irregularities. The patent issues will take longer to resolve. Emily sighed. It's going to be messy. I'll cooperate, Sophie said suddenly, with the investigations. I have documents, things he asked me to sign for the Singapore operations, things that never felt quite right. Emily studied the woman her husband had chosen as her replacement. Younger, yes, but also accomplished in her own right. Another intelligent woman Ethan had manipulated for his own purposes. In that moment, Emily realized they weren't enemies. They were both victims of the same master manipulator. Why would you help me? Emily asked. Sophie's expression hardened. I'm not helping you. I'm helping myself. He used us both, and I don't let people get away with that. Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Board has suspended ET pending investigation. Security is escorting him out. Where are you? I need to go, Emily said, standing. The board has made their initial decision. Emily, Sophie called as she reached the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. Emily paused. Save your apologies for my daughters. They're the innocent ones in all this. If you're still here without subscribing, why? Don't leave Emily fighting alone. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments. Who do you think Ethan truly loved, Emily or Sophie? By evening, the story had exploded across financial news networks and social media. Tech CEO suspended amid allegations of fraud and bigamy, read the headlines. Quantum's stock had been halted after dropping 15% in the first hour after the news broke. Emily sat in her sister Rachel's living room, watching the twins play in the backyard, blissfully unaware of how their world had changed. Rachel handed her a glass of wine, concern etched on her face. "How are you going to tell them?" Rachel asked softly. "As simply and honestly as I can," Emily replied, "that their father made some bad choices, that he won't be living with us anymore, that it's not their fault." "And the other woman? The second wedding?" Emily shook her head. "They don't need those details yet. They're 6. They just need to know that their parents still love them, even if we won't be together." Rachel squeezed her hand. "You're handling this with more grace than he deserves." "This isn't about what Ethan deserves," Emily said. "It's about what the girls need." In the midst of chaos, her focus remained clear, protecting her daughters from the fallout of their father's betrayal. Her phone had been buzzing constantly all day, journalists, former colleagues, friends who had seen the news. She had responded only to Catherine's updates about the board's emergency actions and the initial legal proceedings. Ethan had tried calling 17 times. She had not answered. When the doorbell rang, Rachel went to answer it, returning with a grim expression. "It's him. Ethan. He's demanding to see the girls." Emily stood up. "Keep the twins in the backyard. I'll handle this." Ethan stood on the porch, his usual polished appearance noticeably disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit wrinkled. "Where are my daughters?" he demanded. "I have a right to see them." "Lower your voice," Emily said calmly. "They're playing in the backyard, and I don't want them to see you like this." "Like what? Like a man whose wife just destroyed his life, tanked his company, humiliated him publicly? Like a man who can't take responsibility for his own actions," Emily corrected. "You did this, Ethan, not me." He ran a hand through his hair, his composure slipping further. "The board has suspended me. The SEC has frozen my accounts. The press is camped outside our house. Are you happy now?" "No," Emily said honestly. "I'm heartbroken for our children. I'm disgusted by your betrayal. I'm angry about the years you stole from me. But I'm not happy. This vendetta will hurt the girls more than anyone," Ethan said, his voice lowering to a manipulative whisper. "Is that what you want? For them to see their father destroyed?" "Don't you dare use them as shields," Emily replied, her voice hardening. "You didn't think about their welfare when you were marrying another woman, or stealing my work, or setting up offshore accounts." Ethan's strategy shifted, his expression softening into the charming smile that had won her heart years ago. "Emily, we can still fix this. For the girls, we can issue a joint statement, say it was all a misunderstanding. I'll make sure you get proper credit for your contributions to the technology. We can work out a private separation that protects everyone's interests." Emily stared at him, amazed at his audacity. "Do you actually think I would trust you now, after everything?" "Think about the practical reality," he pressed. "A prolonged legal battle will drain resources from both of us. The company value will plummet. The girls will be traumatized. Nobody wins." "Except you," Emily observed. "You walk away with minimal consequences, free to start over with your new wife." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The ceremony with Sophie wasn't legally binding. You know that." "I know you stood on a beach and promised to love and honor another woman while still married to me," Emily replied. "The legal technicalities don't change the betrayal." "I made a mistake," Ethan admitted, his voice cracking with what might have been genuine emotion. "A terrible mistake, but don't punish the girls for my failings." "I'm not punishing anyone," Emily said. "I'm protecting what's mine, my work, my dignity, and my daughter's future. You can see the girls tomorrow once you've calmed down. We'll tell them together that we're separating." "Emily, please." "Goodbye, Ethan." She closed the door firmly, leaning against it as she heard his footsteps retreat down the walkway. Rachel appeared from the kitchen. "Is he gone?" Emily nodded. "For now. But this is just the beginning." "Are you sure you want to go through with all of this?" The legal battles, the public scrutiny, the impact on the girls? I'm not the one who created this situation, Emily said, but I refuse to be erased from my own life's work. I refuse to let him teach our daughters that women can be discarded when convenient, and I refuse to let him get away with theft on a massive scale. Rachel hugged her tightly. Then we'll get through it together. That night, after the twins were asleep in Rachel's guest room, Emily sat alone on the porch swing, scrolling through the barrage of news coverage. The narrative was already being shaped and reshaped. Some outlets portraying her as the vengeful wife destroying a brilliant innovator. Others celebrating her as a whistleblower exposing corporate fraud. Neither version captured the complex truth. How many of us have faced moments where the world tries to simplify our pain into convenient narratives? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another journalist. But something made her open the message. This is Grant Walker, Sophie's brother. We need to talk. I have information about Ethan's plans that you should know. Can we meet tomorrow? Emily stared at the message, wondering what new revelations awaited her. The battle was just beginning, and she would need every advantage to protect herself and her daughters from whatever Ethan planned next. She typed a simple reply, name the time and place. The media explosion continued through the night and into the following day. Financial analysts debated the impact on Quantum's future. Tech blogs speculated about the patent disputes. Tabloids ran side-by-side photos of Emily and Sophie with sensationalist headlines. Emily met Grant Walker at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from the financial district, and the press camped outside her Manhattan apartment. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with the same elegant features as his sister, but a more serious demeanor. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Sophie asked me to give you these. She's not in a good place right now. Emily opened the folder to find contracts, emails, and financial documents related to the Singapore operations. Why is she helping me? Because Ethan Carter used her, Grant replied simply. My sister doesn't forgive that kind of manipulation, and because she feels responsible for the impact on your children. Emily scanned the documents, her eyes widening at certain details. These show Ethan was planning to relocate the company's intellectual property to Singapore permanently, to put it beyond U.S. jurisdiction. Grant nodded. The marriage to my sister wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Our family has significant political connections in Singapore that would have protected his assets. And Sophie didn't know? She knew parts of it. She believed his story that you had agreed to a separation and would be fairly compensated, that the asset transfers were standard tax optimization. Grant's expression hardened. My sister is brilliant at business development, but she has a blind spot for manipulative men. Ethan convinced her they were building something revolutionary together. Emily felt a strange kinship with Sophie in that moment. He's very good at making you believe you're special, that you're building something historic together. There's something else, Grant said, lowering his voice. Ethan contacted Sophie this morning. He's trying to convince her to claim you fabricated evidence, that she never actually married him. And what did she say? She refused, but he's desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Grant hesitated. You should know he's meeting with Julian Kraft this afternoon. Emily's stomach dropped. Julian Kraft was a notorious crisis management specialist known for aggressive tactics and media manipulation. His specialty was character assassination disguised as public relations. The game was about to get much uglier. Thank you for telling me, she said, gathering the documents. These will help strengthen the legal case. Sophie wants you to know she'll testify if needed, about everything. Grant stood to leave. She also wanted me to tell you she's sorry about your children, that she never would have gotten involved if she'd known the truth. After Grant left, Emily called Catherine immediately. Ethan is hiring Julian Kraft. We need to prepare for a smear campaign. Already on it, Catherine replied. I've been monitoring the situation. 3 tabloids have received anonymous tips about your mental health history, suggesting you've been unstable for years. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Of course, Ethan would use her postpartum depression against her. What's our counter strategy? We've prepared statements from your doctors confirming your treatment and recovery, and we have 4 former quantum engineers ready to corroborate your role in developing the core technology. What about the children? How do we protect them from this? Catherine's voice softened. I've arranged for a child psychologist who specializes in high-conflict divorces to be available. And we should consider a temporary media blackout around your home and the girls' school. Do it, Emily said. Whatever it costs. When she returned to Rachel's house, Emily found her daughters building an elaborate fort in the living room, cushions and blankets transformed into walls and tunnels. Their innocent laughter made her heart ache. How quickly life can change. Yesterday, they were a family. Today, she was preparing for war. "Mommy, come see our castle," Emma called, waving excitedly. Emily crawled into their creation, marveling at their resilience. They had no idea their world was crumbling around them. "It's magnificent," she said, accepting a plastic tiara that Lily placed on her head. "Are you two the princesses?" "No, silly," Lily giggled. "We're the knights who protect the kingdom. You're the queen." "Where's the king?" Emily asked carefully. The twins exchanged glances. "There isn't one," Emma declared. "This kingdom doesn't need a king. The queen is in charge of everything." Emily pulled them both into a tight hug, fighting back tears. "That's right. And this queen will always protect her knights." Later that evening, Ethan arrived as scheduled to help tell the children about their separation. He looked more composed than the previous day, though the strain showed around his eyes. "Before we do this," Emily said quietly while the girls were washing up for dinner, "I want to be clear about something. You can attack me all you want through Julian Craft. You can question my stability, my motives, whatever narrative you think will save your reputation. But you will not drag our daughters into this fight." Ethan had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I would never use the girls as pawns." "You already have," Emily countered, "by creating this situation in the first place." The conversation with the twins was as difficult as Emily had feared. They sat the girls down in Rachel's living room, trying to explain complex adult failures in terms 6-year-olds could understand. "Daddy and I have decided we can't live together anymore," Emily began gently. "Are you getting a divorce?" Emma asked immediately. "Like Zoe's parents?" Emily nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, but we both still love you and Lily very much. That will never change." "Did Daddy do something bad?" Lily asked, her analytical mind already searching for causes. Ethan flinched. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," he said carefully. "Big mistakes that hurt people they care about. Did you hurt Mommy?" Emma's direct question hung in the air. Ethan met Emily's eyes briefly before answering. "Yes, I made choices that hurt your mother very much, and I'm very sorry for that." "Then say you're sorry and fix it," Lily suggested, as if the solution were obvious. "Sometimes sorry isn't enough," Emily explained. "Sometimes when trust is broken, it can't be put back together the same way." The questions continued. Where would they live? Would they still see Daddy? Would they have to change schools? Emily and Ethan answered as honestly as they could while shielding the girls from the uglier aspects of their situation. If only adult problems could be solved with a child's logic, a simple apology and everything fixed. When the twins finally went to bed, confused but not devastated, Ethan lingered in the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not demonizing me to them." "I didn't do it for you," Emily replied. "I did it for them. They deserve to love their father, even if I can't trust him anymore." Ethan's expression shifted, a glimpse of genuine regret breaking through his calculated exterior. "For what it's worth, I did love you. In the beginning, but not enough to be faithful, not enough to give me credit for my work, not enough to be honest." Emily shook her head. "That's not love, Ethan. That's ownership. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss interim leadership," he said, changing the subject. "They're considering naming you acting CEO." Emily hadn't expected that. "Who told you?" "I still have allies even now." Ethan's smile was bitter. "They think it will stabilize the stock price. The brilliant woman behind the technology finally getting her due. Is that supposed to upset me? No, it's supposed to make you think about what you really want." Ethan stepped closer. "If you take the position, you'll be responsible for thousands of employees, investors, clients. The weight of the company will be on your shoulders while I fight the SEC charges. You think I can't handle it? I think you've been out of the technical loop for years. I think the market will scrutinize your every decision. I think you'll be set up to fail." His voice lowered. "Or we could present a united front. Announce that we're working through our personal issues while focusing on the company's future. I keep the CEO title. You become Chief Technology Officer with full credit for your contributions. Emily stared at him, amazed at his persistence. You really don't give up, do you? It's what made us successful, Ethan replied. Our determination. Together. There is no together anymore, Emily said firmly. Not personally, not professionally. If the board offers me the CEO position, I'll accept it, and I'll run the company better than you ever did. Ethan's facade finally cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. You have no idea what you're up against. The technical landscape has evolved. The competitive pressures are immense. The board will abandon you at the first sign of weakness. Maybe, Emily acknowledged, but at least I'll fail honestly, on my own terms. Not as someone's shadow. As Ethan left, Emily felt a strange sense of liberation. For years, she had measured herself against his standards, accepted his assessment of her capabilities, believed his narrative about their partnership. Now she was finally free to discover who she was without his influence. As a technologist, as a leader, and as a mother. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes after the most painful betrayal. The following weeks unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, media coverage, and corporate restructuring. As Ethan had predicted, the board named Emily interim CEO while the investigations continued. The stock price stabilized somewhat on the announcement, though it remained well below its previous levels. Emily moved the twins back to their Manhattan apartment, hiring additional security to keep the press at bay. She established a new routine. Mornings with the girls before school, intense workdays rebuilding trust with the quantum team, evenings focused entirely on family time. Ethan, meanwhile, launched his counter-offensive through Julian Kraft. Stories appeared questioning Emily's technical credentials, suggesting she had been treated for emotional instability in the past, implying she had orchestrated a coup out of jealousy. But the narrative he tried to create never fully took hold. Too many former colleagues came forward confirming Emily's contributions. Financial journalists uncovered more irregularities in Quantum's international operations, and most damaging of all, Sophie Bennett gave an exclusive interview detailing Ethan's manipulation and deception. He created elaborate fictions to keep us both in the dark, Sophie told a prominent tech publication. He told me Emily had agreed to step back from the company in exchange for a generous settlement. He told her I was just a business partner. He played us against each other while systematically moving company assets beyond regulatory reach. The interview was devastating to Ethan's remaining credibility. 3 days later, the SEC announced formal charges against him for securities fraud, financial misrepresentation, and breach of fiduciary duty. Emily was reviewing the latest patent documentation with her legal team when Catherine arrived with the news. Ethan's legal team has reached out, Catherine announced. They want to discuss settlement terms. Emily looked up from her computer. What kind of settlement? Comprehensive, civil, criminal, corporate, and personal. Catherine sat down, her expression serious. He's offering to relinquish all claims to the patents, admit to financial misconduct, and agree to a 5-year ban from serving as an officer in any public company. In exchange for what? Reduced criminal charges, no jail time, and, Catherine hesitated, 50% custody of the twins. Emily felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. Absolutely not. He doesn't get to use our children as bargaining chips. Emily, Catherine said gently, the custody battle could get ugly. Even with everything he's done, courts generally favor shared parenting arrangements unless there's evidence of direct harm to the children. He betrayed them too, Emily argued. He was willing to discard their mother, steal her work, marry another woman, all while pretending to be the perfect father. None of which directly impacts his parenting abilities in the eyes of family court, Catherine pointed out. We can fight it, but you need to be prepared for a long, painful process that will inevitably affect the girls. Emily stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. The company she had built was finally hers again. Her innovations were being properly attributed. Her leadership was proving effective despite Ethan's predictions of failure. But at what cost to Emma and Lily? How many of us have faced impossible choices between justice and peace? I need to think about this, she said finally, and I need to talk to the girls. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Emily sat on her balcony staring at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unexpected source, Sophie. I heard about Ethan's settlement offer. If you need another statement about his character for the custody case, I'm willing. Emily hesitated before replying, Thank you. Can I ask you something personal? The response came quickly. Of course. Did you love him? There was a long pause before Sophie's answer appeared. I loved who I thought he was, a visionary who saw my potential, who valued my mind, who wanted to build something meaningful with me. But that person never existed. Emily stared at the words, recognizing her own experience reflected back at her. She typed, I understand completely. Another message from Sophie appeared. For what it's worth, I think you're doing an amazing job with the company. The new direction for the healthcare applications is brilliant. Thank you. That means a lot. A final message from Sophie. We should have been collaborators, not rivals. Well, his greatest skill was keeping strong women isolated from each other. Emily smiled slightly at the truth of that observation. Perhaps we still can be. Collaborators, I mean, when the dust settles. I'd like that. The exchange left Emily with a sense of clarity she hadn't expected. Ethan had spent years controlling the narrative, about the company, about their marriage, about her capabilities. He had isolated her from potential allies and manipulated her priorities. And now he was trying to use their children to maintain his control. It had to stop. The next morning, Emily called Catherine. Tell Ethan's team I'll agree to the patent and corporate terms. I'll support reduced charges with no jail time. But on custody, I want primary physical placement with generous visitation rights for him. Non-negotiable. He won't accept that, Catherine warned. Then we go to court, Emily said firmly, and we bring everything into the open. Every manipulation, every lie, every betrayal. I won't use the children as weapons, but I won't let him use them as shields either. 3 days later, Ethan requested a private meeting. They met at Catherine's office, neutral territory with their lawyers present, but in a separate room. Ethan looked diminished somehow, his usual commanding presence muted by circumstances. You're driving a hard bargain, he said without preamble. I'm protecting my children, Emily corrected. There's a difference. They're my children too. A flash of genuine emotion crossed his face. Whatever I did to you, however badly I betrayed your trust, I love Emma and Lily. I believe you, Emily said, surprising herself with the admission. That's why I'm offering generous visitation. Every weekend, half the holidays, 2 weeks in summer. But they need stability, Ethan, a primary home base during this upheaval. And you think that should be with you? Yes, because I've never lied to them, because I didn't create this situation, because they shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes. Ethan was silent for a long moment. The company is thriving under your leadership, he said finally. The healthcare initiative has attracted new investors. The patent clarifications have stabilized the stock price. Is that an attempt at a compliment or a change of subject? Emily asked. Neither. It's an acknowledgement. Ethan met her eyes directly. You were always the true innovator. I just knew how to sell the vision. And take credit for it, Emily added. Yes. The simple admission seemed to cost him. I convinced myself it was a fair exchange. Your brilliance for my business acumen. But somewhere along the way, I started believing my own mythology. Is this supposed to be an apology? It's supposed to be the truth. Finally, Ethan leaned forward. I'll accept your custody terms on one condition, which is that you never tell the girls what I did, the full extent of it. Let them believe it was a normal divorce, irreconcilable differences, nothing more. Emily studied him, seeing both calculation and genuine fear in his expression, fear of losing his daughter's admiration, fear of being seen for who he truly was. Even now, at his lowest point, he was still trying to control the narrative. I won't lie to them, she said finally, but I won't volunteer information they're too young to process. When they're older, if they ask direct questions, I'll answer honestly, but without malice. Ethan nodded slowly. I suppose that's the best I can hope for. It's more than you deserve, Emily said, not unkindly, but it's what's best for Emma and Lily. As she stood to leave, Ethan asked, was any of it real? Us? Emily paused at the door. Parts of it, in the beginning, before ambition and ego corrupted it. She looked back at him. The tragedy is that we could have built something extraordinary together as equals, but you couldn't see me as your equal, only as your asset. And now you've taken everything, Ethan said, a hint of his old bitterness returning. No, Emily corrected him. I've reclaimed what was mine. There's a difference. Hold on. Who has not subscribed yet? You've followed Emily through hell. Don't just watch. Support her story. Subscribe, like, and comment if you believe she deserved better. 1 year later, Emily stood at a podium accepting the Women in Technology Visionary Award. The audience included industry leaders, former colleagues, and new allies made during her journey from shadow to spotlight. Innovation isn't just about creating something new, she told the crowd. It's about having the courage to protect what you've created, to stand up for your vision when others try to diminish or steal it, to insist on recognition not for ego, but because attribution matters. Truth matters. In the front row, Emma and Lily watched their mother with undisguised pride. At 7 years old, they understood only parts of what had happened, that their parents had separated, that their mother now ran the company, that their father had made business mistakes he was trying to make up for. What they didn't yet grasp was how their mother had transformed from the supportive wife who helped with science projects into the confident CEO whose face now appeared on magazine covers. How she had reclaimed not just her professional identity, but her personal power. Sometimes the most powerful lessons we teach our children aren't in words, but in actions. Quantum Innovations had not just survived the scandal, but emerged stronger. Under Emily's leadership, the company had refocused its predictive technology on healthcare applications, developing systems that could identify disease patterns before symptoms appeared. The ethical framework she implemented had become an industry standard, and the corporate culture had shifted from Ethan's secretive, hierarchical structure to one of transparency and collaboration. After the ceremony, Emily mingled with colleagues and admirers, accepting congratulations with the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. A familiar face appeared at the edge of the crowd. Sophie Bennett, elegant as always, but with a new serenity in her expression. Congratulations, Sophie said, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. The healthcare initiative is remarkable. Thank you. Emily accepted the glass. I heard your new venture secured Series A funding. Impressive timeline, Sophie smiled. Turns out investors appreciate women who build things rather than take credit for others' work. Their relationship had evolved into an unexpected alliance. After the dust settled, Sophie had launched her own company focused on financial technology for underserved markets. They weren't friends exactly, but they had developed a mutual respect born from shared experience. 2 women who had survived the same storm, now charting their own courses. How are the girls? Sophie asked. Thriving, surprisingly. Emily glanced toward Emma and Lily, who were charming a group of engineers with their precocious questions about artificial intelligence. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for. And Ethan? Emily's expression remained neutral, complying with the custody arrangement, starting some kind of consulting firm in Boston, sending the occasional email suggesting synergies between our companies. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Still trying to insert himself into your success? Old habits die hard, Emily shrugged, but his emails go directly to my assistant now. I don't have time for ghosts. As the evening wound down, Emily gathered her daughters and awards, heading toward the exit. Her assistant approached with a message. Ethan called. He wants to know if he can take the girls for an extra day this weekend. Some father-daughter science exhibition. Emily considered the request. Despite everything, Ethan had maintained his relationship with the twins, showing up consistently for his visitation weekends. Never missing a school event. Sending thoughtful gifts on birthdays and holidays. Whatever his flaws as a husband and business partner, he seemed determined to be a better father. Tell him yes, Emily decided. The girls would enjoy that. Outside, her driver held the door as Emma and Lily climbed into the car, chattering excitedly about the evening. Emily paused, looking back at the glittering event space where she had just been celebrated for innovations that, a year ago, had been attributed to someone else. The journey from betrayal to vindication had been brutal at times. There had been moments when the legal battles, media scrutiny, and emotional toll seemed too heavy to bear. Nights when she questioned whether the fight was worth the cost. How many of us have stood at similar crossroads, wondering if the price of justice is too high? But standing here now, watching her daughters grow into confident young women who witnessed their mother's strength firsthand, Emily knew she had made the right choice, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been erased from her own story. As the car pulled away, Emma leaned against her shoulder. "Mom, are you going to invent something new next? Something even bigger?" Emily smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "I already did, sweetheart. I invented a new version of myself." 6 months later, Emily sat across from Ethan at a quiet cafe midway between their respective homes. Their quarterly parenting alignment meeting, as their mediator called it, a chance to discuss the twins' development, educational needs, and any concerns without lawyers present. Ethan looked different now, the designer suits replaced by more casual attire, the polished corporate veneer softened somewhat by time and consequence. His new consulting business was modestly successful, though nothing compared to his former status. "The girls mentioned you're dating someone," he said after they had covered the practical matters of summer camps and tutoring schedules. Emily nodded. "Grant Walker, Sophie's brother, ironically enough." Ethan's expression flickered with something unreadable. "Keeping it in the family?" "We connected during the legal proceedings," Emily explained, ignoring the barb. "He's thoughtful, honest, respects boundaries." "And the girls, how do they feel about him?" "They like him. He coaches Lily's robotics team and helped Emma build her science fair project." Emily studied Ethan's face. "They know he's not trying to replace you, if that's what you're worried about." Ethan nodded, relief evident in his posture. "Good. That's good." He hesitated. "I'm seeing someone too. Nothing serious yet, but—" "You don't need my permission or approval, Ethan. I know, but I want to be transparent about everything moving forward." He met her eyes directly. "I'm still in therapy, working on patterns, tendencies." Emily nodded, acknowledging the effort without offering absolution. "The girls deserve the best version of both of us." As they prepared to leave, Ethan asked the question he posed at every one of these meetings. "Is there anything else I can do to make amends?" Usually Emily deflected, keeping the focus on co-parenting rather than their complicated past. But today, something prompted her to answer differently. "Yes, actually, the Women in Tech mentorship program I started at Quantum. We're looking for case studies on ethical failures in leadership. Cautionary tales." Ethan stiffened. "You want to use me as an example? I want you to speak to these young women directly about what happens when ambition overshadows integrity, about the cost of taking credit for others' work." Emily held his gaze. "About how to recognize when someone is trying to diminish their contributions." "That would be difficult." "Yes, it would be honest." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Emily gathered her things. "The twins have a piano recital next Tuesday. They'd like you to be there." "I wouldn't miss it." As Emily walked away, she reflected on how far they had all come from that moment when mysterious wedding photos had shattered her world. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, perhaps it never would, but it had transformed into something constructive. A foundation for rebuilding rather than a weight dragging her down. Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of strength. Her phone buzzed with a text from Grant. "Board approved the expansion. Champagne tonight?" Emily smiled, typing back. "Absolutely. After the girls' bedtime. Big breakthrough on the neural mapping project today too." Life had settled into a new rhythm. Not perfect, but authentic. Not what she had planned, but perhaps what she had always needed. The company was thriving under her vision. The twins were growing into compassionate, curious young women, and she was finally living as the architect of her own story rather than a character in someone else's. That evening, after helping the girls with homework and listening to their piano pieces, Emily stood on her balcony watching the city lights. Grant would arrive soon with champagne to celebrate the board's approval of her international expansion plan. The neural mapping breakthrough would revolutionize early detection of cognitive disorders. The mentorship program was changing the trajectory of young women engineers' careers. All of this had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. How often does our greatest pain lead to our most meaningful purpose? Her phone buzzed with an email notification. "Ethan." The subject line read, "Re-mentorship program." "I'll do it," he had written. "Not for you, not even for amends, but for Emma and Lily, who should grow up in a world where no one can take credit for their brilliance. Emily smiled slightly, appreciating the honesty. Perhaps there was hope for him after all. Not as her partner, never again as her husband, but as a father capable of growth, as a man learning finally to recognize the damage his ambition had caused. She typed a simple reply. "Thank you. They'll be proud of you for this." As she pressed send, the elevator chimed, announcing Grant's arrival. Emily put down her phone, leaving the past behind as she moved toward her future, a future she had fought for, earned, and now fully owned. In the end, Ethan's betrayal hadn't destroyed her. It had revealed her true strength. His attempt to erase her had only made her more determined to stand in her full power, and his underestimation of her resilience had been his greatest miscalculation. Emily Parker wasn't just a brilliant engineer who had reclaimed her stolen innovations. She was a woman who had rewritten her own story, showing her daughters and the world what happens when you refuse to be erased. If you watch to the end without subscribing, why? If this journey moved you, don't leave quietly. Hit subscribe, like, share this video, and tell me in the comments. What part of Emily's transformation inspired you the most?